Whew. Here goes another one. Hey guys, welcome to another controversial video that I like to create. I know it likes to rustle some feathers out there, but at the same time, I truly believe I do my best to not bullshit. May not always be right about a lot of things, but I wouldn't put myself out there if I felt like, you know what I'm saying? Now, it's been about 8 months since my last video, and I was in the process of creating another one, kind of in the earlier summertime, that was kind of explaining more so the psychology and the way that the story is being told and why, and kind of why so many people are polarized on the subject, and essentially kind of where, like the whole, it was really complex. It wasn't even finished its draft, and I would say it was going to easily be approaching an hour in length. And I just felt like, given that it would have been done on teleprompter, it would have just been me, like, I didn't think it was worth doing. So, like the reason that I've always wanted to get into the videography, the reason why I turned on the camera to begin with is I ideally want to be showing the solutions and not necessarily be going on long rants about the problems. There's a lot of people out there talking about the problems. It's really up to you whether or not you want to go out and become more aware, or just take what the media tells you and call it a day. But in either case, though, I'm assuming if you're going to get to the end of this video, you're probably a little more open to at least hearing somebody else's opinion on the matters. And so without further ado, let's just kind of get into it. Today is the November 18th. I won't go into too much about the last videos and what I think has changed and whatnot. I think a lot of what I've said, sort of based off the information that I had, I still think is very sound. But the information did change quite a bit since, since then. I mean, the entire media is a dumpster fire. Everybody is copy pasting each other's stories. It's basically the same story over and 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 over again. But if you actually look into it, or try to look into finding where they're getting their source from, where they're getting their stories from, they're very small cases or very weak cases at best, but everybody's saying the same thing over on it, right? And ironically enough, when you do look into it, what you'll find is a lot of bullshit, pardon my language on that one, is they'll create a story and then later on it'll get debunked by the people that are involved by the story, if you will. Like a prime example is the mask companies themselves. They've all stated, read the box. It'll say on your box, this does not protect you from COVID-19. Basically, anything that is sort of touching COVID-19 from a business perspective, they're very mindful of their legal obligations and protection. But the political side of COVID-19 is what's driving everything. Like, for an example, all these tests that people are supposedly taking and doing, they're nowhere even remotely near accurate. We might as well, I don't know, get a blood sample and a dart board and just throw darts at the board and get a result that way. It's that inaccurate. And the scientists and the companies behind these tests have all publicly said that this is not an accurate way of testing COVID-19. But the media and the politicians just don't want to buy into that. They just want more, more COVID-19. That's all they want, because it's profitable. I mean, the media, this is a heyday for them. Their ratings are up higher than probably since 9/11. And the politicians, well, I think a lot of them are just stuck. They're not personally responsible, but they're in a position where they should be taking responsibility, and I mean, it's a dumpster fire. In any case, though, let's just sort of move on, because realistically, I don't think many people are going to really agree on what COVID-19 is. You know, like, I have a lot I could say about it, but ironically enough, even though this is a COVID update video, this is not even the bulk of what I want to share with you. What I want to share with you is the collapse of the economy. So it doesn't even matter if COVID is real or not. This is the future that we all have to deal with. And I've been studying this phenomenon for well over 10 years now. I've studied a lot of history, a lot of past depressions. I mean, there's only one formal depression because most just end up in war and whatever else, and I don't think they... In any case, though, studied a lot of collapses of empires and whatnot, and in a nutshell, if I were to summarize it, we're going to go into the greatest one that we've ever seen in all of human history. I've been calling it the Great Depression² for about 10 years now, and the rough idea, I mean, it's not a perfect math formula. The funny way that I like to say it is I like to think of it as like, take the Great Depression and multiply it by itself, and that's going to be our future for the next 10 years. And what this is going to kind of turn into, it roughly is, I think the economy is going to shrink by about a third, which is not a small number by any stretch. You know, imagine cutting your bills in half by a third. And ironically enough, if that's all it was, okay, everybody's little, you know, it wouldn't be so bad. And I think if we can transition into that, it won't be so bad. But we're not. We're gonna fight over it. There'll probably be civil wars. There'll probably be a lot more destruction than just accepting that we gotta cut our energy consumption. Because fundamentally, that's what it comes down to. It. I know I've been saying for years now that I want to try to explain what I mean about the energy equation. It's just such a complex, I still don't know how to illustrate it. But in essence, everything is energy. You cannot get something for nothing. And for the last, since I would say the year 2000, even then it goes before that, for many decades, probably since the 70s anyway, for sure, we have been over leveraging our economy through the policies, through economic reforms, through how we got off the gold standard, and we lifted the Glass-Steagall Act in 2000, or 2001, one of those years. I didn't write that down. But anyway, the Glass-Steagall Act was put in place back in the last Great Depression to prevent, or basically not prevent, but to segregate investment banks from savings banks. And that worked really well for a long time until the dot-com bubble thing kind of had an issue. And then for whatever reason, they got rid of it. So basically for the last 20 years now, all savings have been put on the stock market to be gambled. When it works, but when it doesn't, it doesn't. And we've created a lot of debt. We've created a lot of surplus money printing, and all that has to be corrected at some point or another. And my personal opinion is, whether COVID is real or not, whatever the data is, whatever we look back on it in the past, we're going to find that that's the smaller story. We're going to call it that, but really, that's the excuse that we're going to have for the collapse of our economy. Now, it's not just about losing our purchasing power. It's not just about losing our ability to drive. It's not just about giving up the kind of lifestyle that we're used to. Because to be real frank, it wasn't sustainable. Nobody's happy. But it's just the only way that we're all familiar with. So we just kind of keep going along with it. I think some of the deeper parts of it is when you look at our history, you look at human rights and whatnot, democracy as a whole, it was relatively an invention after World War II. Don't get me wrong, there's little fragments before that, but it was because we made a world, or we were put into a world where we had an abundance of opportunities, and it really didn't make any sense for any form of a dictatorship like like a monarchy or even communism, if you will. It didn't make sense for them to try to control what people could be more efficient at, if you will. It would be better for us to manage ourselves better, which is still true to some degree. I think there's a lot of things we need to do differently about that. But anyway, the case that I'm getting at is I believe that is going to die. Democracy is probably arguably already dead, but if it's not dead, or if you still believe that it is alive, well, it's going to be certainly out cold now. There won't be any shadow of a doubt in a couple of years or a few years from now or whatever. I don't think it'll be a few years, probably a couple of years. Like, we're going through the transitions right now. We're losing all our rights as we speak. We're not getting those back. And I think the way that they're pitching and selling it is, like with the COVID checks in Canada, and every country has their own sort of variation of the story. I think because people need an answer, because people need, like they're losing their job, they're losing their business, it's going to be very easy to be sold on socialism. And even I will admit, standing here right now, even though I know it's going to be I really don't want that. I just don't know what else I'll do in the short term. So in the short term, this is going to look real good. But unfortunately, the problem with socialism is, it's the same with democracy. If you look at socialism it's a failed system. There's no proven success. Even if you look in the northern European countries like Switzerland and whatever else, they still have free markets. They just have high taxes, and that high taxes is what pays for the socialism. But they still need free markets to create the energy, the value that they can use. If that isn't there, then it's going to be communism. Now, I put it in a little box here with AI because I believe that I think AI might even be running the show right now. It's kind of hard to prove that one. It's still, I would still consider that even maybe, maybe more of a conspiracy, if you will. Hard to say. I can't say it's a conspiracy. The conspiracy part of it is because I don't have the absolute facts of A, B, C, D, AI. This is what it is. We're still figuring that out. Because every single year, AI is advancing in ways that you couldn't even believe. Like sorry, I can't remember. AI is pretty sophisticated. It is beyond what I thought it was possible today. It's unbelievable. And I believe that in many respects, AI is running, essentially it's running a lot of these tech companies right now. And it's still in its infancy. And I think every year it is exponentially growing. So anyway, I believe what is ultimately going to happen is AI is already, influencing it over here. But by the time we get over here, we are going to be living in a completely computer delegated government, if you will. And we've never seen that before. I can agree that if it works really well, it could be a good thing. But the problem with it is, and I think Elon Musk makes a really good point of it, if the AI computer or the box or the control is controlled by a company, a government, doesn't really matter. They ultimately, it'll be, like Elon Musk has pointed out, it'll be in like hundreds, thousands of times more dangerous than the nuclear warheads and whatnot. I could go into a rant about where AI is going, where it's expected to go, about especially when we talk about quantum computers and the theoretical sense of what they're able to do when, I don't think it's there yet, but when it's there, actually, let me just briefly plant this seed. In theory, the quantum computer will be kind of like a magic genie, if you will. You ask it a question, and it will just give you the answer. And the reason that it can give you the answer is what it does is it, by math, reduces all the unlikely scenarios and then ultimately gives you the most likely scenario for that answer. So using a really interesting one would be like passwords. Encryption, for an example. Like, we've got pretty good encryption today. It's pretty sophisticated, I would say. When this form of computers becomes more readily available, if it's not already, there won't be a password in the world, or ever. There won't be information. There will be nothing that could be put in a box and hidden, because you just simply ask. You just ask the computer, and it'll just tell you. You know, you wanna know how to get to Mars or to get to the other side of the universe. You just simply ask it, ask for instructions, and it'll just be on its merry. You'd be on your merry way. Now imagine that kind of power in the hands of even one or two or a dozen or a company or whatever. They would have absolutely control of everything. They'd have all the answers they could ever want and need, and they would be demigods. So anyway, it's important that when AI comes online, it has to be readily available. And that's why I believe that if we can democratize AI, and it's part of our governing systems, I think that could be a good thing. But if it's not, and this is where the math and the debate would be that it would be unlikely that's going to happen. I don't know. It's a big question mark still, but we're going to find out this decade. By 2030, universities will be obsolete. And yeah, in this decade, we're going to see the most significant change in human history that would be comparable to the invention of fire itself. I mean, even greater than the discovery and use of oil. Like, it'll be that significant. So be ready for that. So anyway, yeah, that's what we're dealing with. And again, like I was saying earlier, I want to be solution based. Like, this is still more of a short-term solution. But if we're going to be dealing with that, with the economy shrinking by 1/3, and by the way, that's like going to be like the first round. I think the sooner we can adapt to 1/3, the longer we'll be able to hold on to this for, answers to possibly come. However, if we struggle with this, it could be 5-10 years, I don't know, but we'll face another haircut, if you will. We're gonna, like, oil is not infinite, and that's a whole nother video. So anyway, I want to leave you off with something that I need you to ponder quite seriously about. A large part of my the center of my theory, if you will, on helping or not helping, but like, what should we do about a lot of things, is we need to go back to the village. We need to be. The Western world as a whole has segregated itself. The families live in different cities. The blood is everywhere. And so too is all our resources that go with it. Everybody's chasing different things, and everybody's an army of one. Excuse me. Like, they're their own sort of whatever. And I mean, it's not a good thing. We've got mental illnesses like we've never seen in our history. We're fragmented, and we are a social creature. Whether, I know a lot of people are like, oh, we're not monkeys. Well, we're monkeys. We got stuff. That's the only difference. I mean, there are some differences, but we are monkeys, and our biology needs people. Our identities, our health, our way of like who we are is based not on what we are as a person or as an individual, but the sum of the group that we're with. There are like there's no self-made millionaires. There's no one in sports. There's nobody that has amounted to anything by themselves. And if I were to use an interesting analogy, that look at Jesus, the Son of God. He had 12 disciples. I'd be willing to bet everything that his story would not be anything. It wouldn't even be there if it wasn't for his 12 disciples. He needed a group, a clan, the embodiment of many to to get the word out, if you will. It's no different than anything we do in life. You know, our interest in things is all based off of social proof. And anyway, what I'm really getting at is our relationships are fragmented, and we need to like put them back together. We need to bring back the family. We need to do this. And so not only that, you know, like for an example, let's say you got an arbitrary family out there, and between them all, they have 5 houses, 5 mortgages. They have varying degrees of equity and whatnot. And in the old system that we're used to, it's not sustainable, but that's what we're used to, and that's what we considered what worked. Now we need to kind of go, you know what? Maybe not everybody needs to come into one location again. Maybe there might be reasons why that's not practical, but I think the families have to come back together. So I think a really good example would just be, like, let's just use the example that in this situation everybody does. Sell all 5 of those homes, put all that equity into one, and own the house as a family. And make sure you get a house that is big enough to, you know, fit everybody. Unfortunately, the infrastructure that we have been building in the last 50 years doesn't really support that. So part of the solution might be buying 2 houses that are adjacent to each other and coexisting, you know, as 2 buildings. And I don't know, like that's a whole nother, I do know, that's a whole nother thing. And then ultimately what this is going to do is this is going to reduce the energy consumption per person, if you will. You know, like take the concept of eating. You know, we used to live in a society or whatever where it would cost us more to eat if we came together. You know, if we all went to a restaurant as a family or you know, corporate event, doesn't really matter. It costs us more. And what we need to do is we need to go backwards on that one and come together as a family, get that bulk efficiency, if you will, so that way our eating is lessened. Or not lessened, like we're still eating, we still gotta eat, but the overall cost, the efficiency behind it becomes much better. But this also means that, you know, well, as a package, it also means our automotive usage is too. I mean, again, there's so many things that just, I could go on in its own thing, but the death of the automobile is going to happen like this decade. And don't believe that everybody's going to be driving Teslas in 10 years like you see today. I think that only 10% of the people are going to be able to afford a Tesla. And even then, I don't think most people are going to own the Tesla. They're just going to have a ride share type program. And then that also might mean that more than 10% of people will have access to one, but it won't be theirs. And it won't be something that they can just drive to and from work every day. You'll have to be somebody. You'll have to be somebody of significance or importance or whatever. But what I'm getting at is people are gonna have to work and live a lot closer to home, and you're gonna have to start taking a bike to work or something. Needless to say, I practice what I preach. So yeah, I mean, other than going on a rant forever and ever on that, there's a lot I could say, but I've said something at least. I hope that in some ways it helps. I don't know if it does because it's not a complete solution, but I want you to be thinking about things like, you know, the economy dropping. This is going to be a Great Depression. Democracy is going to be lost. We're going to go through a socialism phase, but ultimately power corrupts. As long as people are in control of things, it's going to look a lot like communism. And the only way to really do that is to consolidate, or to resist this is to consolidate. Like this, I can go on for days on how we can go about doing that. I just obviously can't go into that right now, but this could, I mean, it's really hard to say. This is ultimately, whatever this comes up with, that's 100% certain that whatever it figures out is going to be, I don't know what my percentage is, but this is 100%, and this is still to be debated. But in any case, though, yeah, have yourself a good one. If you did get this far, thanks for watching, and we'll see you around.